Hello, this is Kevork Almassian of Syrian Analysis. Today I want to talk about the latest developments underground in Syria. First of all, as you can see, this is the map of Syria, where the different conflicting parties have control over different areas. I will start from the northern side or northeastern side, this yellow side, which is controlled by the so-called Syrian Democratic Forces. The Syrian Democratic Forces are mainly the Kurdish militias with the backing of the American and recently the French. This area is completely controlled by the Americans, so this is an area of influence of the Americans, in exception to this small three islands in Kamishli and in Hasake, where the Syrian army and the security forces have very little control on this area. Then we have ISIS still has some pockets with the borders of Syria, and then we have this area also in the desert. ISIS has some control over it, but their numbers are very few, so they don't pose a serious threat on the Syrian army in the surroundings of this area. But the main ISIS strength is near the borders of Iraq, and also, as you can see, this part with the Abu Kamal area, also with the borders of Iraq. The ISIS terrorists are attacking from this area and the Syrian army, and the Kurdish militias in the eastern shores of the Euphrates, they declared a new operation to capture this area. Let's see how things will develop in that area. But also let's remember that the Syrian army tried to advance into the eastern shore of the Euphrates in order to recapture the gas and oil fields, but the Americans pushed back the Syrian forces a few days ago. This area with Tanaf also is controlled by the American proxies, and they are in control of the border crossings with Jordan. But most importantly, what's going on underground with battles and wars, I will talk about, for example, in Damascus, the latest in Damascus. As you can see, this area was controlled by the Islamist militants, and only a couple of weeks ago the Syrian army, which was called Eastern Ghouta, so the Syrian army captured these areas, and now it's completely under the control of the Syrian government. Now the battles are concentrated in the southern suburbs of Damascus. As you can see, these green buses, the Syrian army, with the mediation of the Russians, agreed with the Islamist militants of this area, especially in Beit Saham, in Babilla and Yelda, to go to the North Syria by the buses. They were mainly so-called Free Syrian Army and Al-Nusra Front, but the ISIS, which is in control of Yarmouk camp and Hajar al-Aswad area, of course, the Syrian army refuses to, let's say, make a deal with ISIS in this particular area, especially that ISIS has treated the Syrian army officers, the captured Syrian army officers, in a very barbaric way, and especially that few days ago one of the Syrian army soldiers his head was filled with explosives and been exploded in a propaganda video by ISIS. So this area was completely in the hands of ISIS. Today the Syrian army sliced the area into two, so separated Hajar al-Aswad from Mukhayyam al-Yarmouk or Yarmouk camp, and now as you can see, the bombing and the operations are concentrated on northeastern side of Hajar al-Aswad and southern side of Yarmouk camp. I don't believe there will be a reconciliation or a deal with ISIS, and I think the Syrian army is determined to destroy ISIS in this area and either capture the terrorists alive or kill them. So this was the southern side of Damascus, and this is Douma, where the alleged chemical attack happened. So the entire capital of Syria will be safe and secure very soon. It remains here remains Daraa, where maybe 40% of the city in the hands of the Syrian government, and the rest are in the hands of Al-Nusra Front, Free Syrian Army, and even ISIS on the borders of the occupied Golan Heights, where Israel support these terrorist groups in this area against the Syrian army. The next development will be in northern Homs and southern Hama. This is the main highway that connects Homs, Hama with Damascus and Aleppo. The Russians are negotiating, and there is a preliminary deal with the terrorists of this area in order to bust them into the north as well. If this area is liberated in the coming days, the entire, let's say, highway from Damascus to Hama will be liberated, and later this part where the highway of Aleppo and Hama, I believe it will be negotiated with between the Russians and the Turks, because as you can see there are Turkish troops. This is a control troops in this area. But as far as I know, the Syrian army or the Syrian leadership are determined to reopen the entire highway from Aleppo to Damascus. That means that the area of Morek, Khan Sheikhun, Ma'bad Nu'man, the Idlib city into North Aleppo should be liberated in order to secure a transportation and safe passage for the civilians, but also for trade and other cars to be able to move freely. Also in Idlib, as you can see, Kafaya and Fuha, these two villages were under siege for more than 3 to 4 years by the terrorists, and around 5,000 people will be safely go out by the deal, thanks to the deal that been held in Damascus with Al-Nusra Front, as I mentioned, in Bet Saham and in Babilla and Yilda. These 3 places were in the deal in exchange to the civilians and the trapped people in Kafaya and Fu'a. Let's see how the developments will continue in the next few days, so that I can do some updates. It seems that the Afrin issue is now postponed. This area is in the hands of the Turkish-backed forces, and Idlib is now also the backyard of Turkey. So we have Turkish proxies here in Azaz, in Afrin, and in Idlib. We have American proxies in northeastern Syria, and also American proxies in Tanaf borders, and Israeli proxies in Daraa, and the red is the Syrian army. However, if we check the map of control only 2 to 3 years ago, we would see that the Syrian army did a lot of advancements comparing to 2013. And in these areas there will be a strategy to liberate, which is a very huge area in the control in the hands of the Americans. I'm not trying to speculate, but as far as I know, and anyone who reads the history of the contemporary history of Syria, and especially after the coming of after Ba'ath Party came to power, you will see that the Syrian leadership under Hafez al-Assad and then Bashar al-Assad, they have a long, we say in Arabic, siyasat al-nafas al-tawil, meaning that the policy of a long breath, that they are not in hurry to take decisions that they will regret. So they work slowly and perfectly on a strategic level to liberate the areas one by one without taking any let's say, stupid decisions. So I'm not saying it is easy, especially the American controlled parts, but it is not impossible, especially if the Syrians were able to reach the people of this area and try to create a mayhem for the Americans from inside these areas. And I think the general mood in the United States is not in favor of, let's say, American troops occupying troops in Syria, and people are asking why the American forces are here. And on a long term, also the Americans cannot afford a long-term stay in Syria, especially if an economic crisis hit the world in early 2020, as some economics are speculating. So the Americans, especially under the leadership of Donald Trump, they will withdraw from this area in order to save some money. But organizing a resistance in this area is also one of the options that the Syrian government can rely on in a later stage. It remains the Turkish the territories that is occupied by the Turkish forces and Turkish proxies. This will be also on the negotiation table with the supervision of the mediation of the Russians. I'm not saying that everything will be all right, but what I'm trying to say that the Syrian government and the Syrian people will try to liberate every inch of Syria, and this is not a slogan but a policy underground. And hopefully every inch of Syria will return to their real owners, including this blue area, which is the occupied Golan Heights, occupied by the Israeli occupation forces. So that was all for today. I'm Kevork Almassian of Syriana Analysis, and see you next time. I am Kevork Almassian of Syriana Analysis. If you like my videos, please hit the like button and subscribe.